Holden, send Lowerhouse to save the house. Come on, the house!
The 6th game of the season, we've beaten Enfield away quite convincingly. But it's a strange scorecard. They've held out to stop us getting the bonus point, but don't really look like they were ever going to get our runs, which is relatively rare so early on in the season. They haven't got 5 wickets, very economical. And Brom, you're back playing here. Lofty, at that stage there, you're probably just under a quarter of the way through the season. Did you see that there was potential for having a good run at winning the title at that stage?
I had a lot of confidence in the side, but as far as saying title contenders at that particular time, that would have been like a dream come true. But I couldn't honestly say. I always had that hope. It was there. It was back in my mind. But I couldn't honestly see it. There were some good sides, you see.
There was good pro.
But we had something different. I think it was team spirit. We were bloody good fielders. We've always been that from 80s on. Our fieldings and today fielding has been a forte of Lowerhouse's. So I don't know.
No, you weren't sure at that stage. I mean, and again, Rottenstall are up there and they're matching us point for point. Just at this point, Evan, did you realise, what sort of a Cinderella club we were and how much it would have meant to win something at that stage? I mean, you're not an old seasoned professional. You're still a young individual. Did you understand what pressure there was there?
Well, I knew that the club had some tough times, and I knew they hadn't won the league. I checked the points in the paper every Monday or Saturday night or whenever it was to see where we were. So I knew, and I was pretty keen to win. No, that's good. And because these are questions that people are asking, and as we developed from 82, some of the professionals said, it was a bit of an extra pressure. Because I think it's worth mentioning at this point, I'll bring you in a minute, Rog, because you definitely played in this game. I think this was your first game back. As far as, Stan, you knew a lot of these people who were going in the club. Our supporters at that stage were fantastic, if you remember. Lots and lots of fans that followed home and away. Were they putting any more pressure on the team, Brom? Can I ask you that? Can you remember, were the supporters putting pressure on you at this stage because you were winning and playing well?
No, I didn't feel any pressure from that. I felt very encouraged by the support, and I genuinely felt that there weren't many teams better than us. I could never think that we were going to win it, but if we were ever going to get beat, it would have to be a good side to beat us.
Can I just come in at that point about your supporters?
Yeah, of course you can, Lofty.
I played with, we all know Colin Milburn.
Yeah.
And that time Colin Milburn was signed was a turning point for Lowerhouse Cricket Club. Because one, he was an England professional or an ex-professional then, and people wanted to see Colin Milburn. Yeah. And that, before he came, the crowds, Stan will tell you, the crowds were very, very few. But once Colin Milburn came into the club, we progressed. Crowds were fantastic. After they come and they carried on coming until now. Best supported club in the leagues. So the supporters have been half as good at sides are. They've been brilliant.
It's a great point, that, Lofty, and I'll bring you in, Stan, in a second. And I can't remember Colin Milburn, but I remember the supporters in the early 80s, and they travel in droves. That's a good point that Lofty brings in there, Stan. Your thoughts on how fantastic our supporters were then and during that season. Can you recall that?
Oh, well, I can. I can go back to sort of 1966 as a tally boy and an observant one, if I may say so. And Lofty, where I'd be 8, and Lofty's absolutely right about the signing of Colin Milburn. The first home gate, if I remember rightly, was something absurd. It was something like £800. They all came to see Colin Milburn, and people, and we'd been shocking in the very, very early 70s, late 60s. We were appalling. I remember one season we only won 2 games. I was the scorer then. We were bottom of the league by 15 points, and you only got 2 points for a win. But people could see an improvement. It started off by us, instead of us being bottom, we were second from bottom. Then the year after, we were joint second from bottom. Then we were third from bottom, fifth from bottom, etc. People could see an improvement. We were all local players. There were no pot hunters. People like Lofty and Graham were very popular people in the football arena and in the town in general. And there was a sort of upswell of support. There was a top step gang that really had come in the days when it was a laugh. And a lot of people had an air of negativity about them, in the sense that they couldn't quite believe how well we were doing. A common comment would be, it's all going to go wrong soon, or this won't last, because that was the Lowerhouse mentality. Lowerhouse snatched defeat from the jaws of victory again. There was an air of that about it. And I think whilst the players didn't have that air, we were confident. We were mostly young, and we did have a good side, but we weren't accustomed to winning leagues. And the more successful you are, the winning habit becomes more entrenched. I think if that season had have happened on the back of 2 near misses, we'd have probably won the league.
Yeah.
But we just, in my opinion, just like that little bit of that narrative to see us over the line in some of the games that we lost. The Burnley one was a good example of that. We just needed somebody to anchor in the middle order, and they'd have seen us home. But we have enjoyed and still enjoy great support. I mean, the place is Evan, if you were to come to the place now, it's unrecognisable, absolutely unrecognisable, from that ramshackle, rundown edifice we called home. And it all started somewhere, of course, and it started, as Alan has said, with the spectators, with Colin Milburn. But the fact that Lowerhouse could be successful only began in 82. We could be successful. We got to the cup final in 81, was it?
Yeah.
80. So we were sort of building up to being a better side. And it was a shame we lost John Hartley, but Bush was a fabulous replacement. And then, of course, we lost Bush. And we've had ups and downs until 2004, when it's been up. But yeah, all that has to start somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, Evan, for the cricket you've played, and it does interest me around the spectator side. What did you feel league cricket, then in Lancashire, and when the weather's getting a bit warmer again towards the end of May, all the fans are having 100 pints of beer between the 4 of them. How did you see the spectators?
Well, I enjoyed the fans from all the clubs, but one particular thing I do remember, I must have got out early in this particular game, and I went up to get a cup of tea. The tea rooms were at the top of the ground, weren't they? And I was just sitting there by myself, and there was a whole lot of people around me. They didn't know I was there, and I could hear them talking about me, and they said, "Oh, Pro's not doing well," and I wasn't getting any runs, that's for sure. And I listened to this for a while, and then I just said, "Oh, we're top of the bloody league. What more do you want?" And then I just went through the side, and Bush is getting runs, and Rusty and Phil Aston, and everyone's doing something. That's a team.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, and Stan just alluded to it. We have been, and it's because of what's gone on for 100 and odd years. We have had that very, very negativity, from some of the ex-players, some of the ex-committee, and I'd like to think that's now gone. The very positive side, the spectators, have eaten into that as well. So that's all good. So, Brom, was this your comeback game?
Yeah. I can't remember too much about it, but I had watched the previous games while I was injured, and everything was looking very good. But
Yeah.
obviously, I was pleased to get back in the side.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're moving on. We're going into the second quarter of the season. Burnley, we played first local derby the end of May at home. We beat them by 5 runs. Anyone on here can remember that game and comment about it?
We had the local pipe band and we had halftime.
There was something
God knows,
playing.
and we had a hell of a crowd, but it was, I've never seen a band at a cricket game before.
Fantastic. You remember that, Stan? We're just talking about I know you've just gone for your
the brass band.
Yeah.
tea cake.
Yeah, I think it was. I think it was something for argument's sake, like a Rosegrove Methodist brass band or something like that.
Was it Boys Brigade?
Yeah, right, Alan. It was the Rosegrove Boys Brigade, and some bright spark had thought we'll have them on the pitch. That was Lowerhouse's first venture into
Entertainment.
Entertainment. But beating Burnley, I mean, back in those days, it wasn't as common. But beating Burnley back then, I mean, half the town went to work with a spring in the step on the Monday.
Yeah.
Because we'd been the poor relations to Burnley for a long, long time, and I've said this before. Burnley weren't magnanimous with it. They would grind you into the dust. In those days, and wouldn't hold back at all in telling you what they thought of you. So they were very, very, very satisfying.
Burnley had actually 3 seasons prior, they'd won the league 2 years on the trot. So actually, that win against Burnley was a big win because they were used to winning.
So let's just look at that game, because Graham is spot on there. Again, it's one of my notes that I've put in, that this appears like it's a turning point because, whilst, it is a tight game. And as you said, Lofty, I think, you were bowling the last over. That opening stand, Stan, between you and Brian, 118, in front of a massive crowd. Just talk us through that, how you felt with that and how satisfying that must have been.
Yeah, well, we played up the top of the square that day, and it was a glorious sunny day. I can remember it. I hadn't until you mentioned the opening stand. I'm trying to think what our collection was. It was a joint collection, and it was a monster. And we probably didn't build on it as much as we should have done, or maybe possibly Brian and myself were maybe a little bit slow. I don't know. I can't remember that much about it, but century stands were uncommon, certainly at Lowerhouse, and it was immensely satisfying. And I love batting with Brian. It was, you never knew what was going to happen next, and he as you know, he could be as daft as a brush. It was 100% entertainment. He'd take them on with the barracky, could more than hold his own because he's sharp-witted as he. He played some great shots. He could defend, he could pull, he could hook, he could drive. He could late cut. Wasn't a bad one, was it, Brian, at all?
No, it wasn't.
No, and then you look at the, their bowling. They've a good bowling line up there. Young Paul Spencer, Bob Whittaker,
yes,
here and there, and a Kiwi professional as well there. Evan, did you know? Was it Gary? It was Gary Robertson.
Yeah, Robbo. I still see him. I saw him last year at New Plymouth. See him probably once or twice a year where he comes down to Wellington for the tests. So I see a lot of Robbo.
Yeah, fantastic. So 185 again. It's a good score. You're probably looking at a 230 in today's current climate. It's a good score, but you look at that Burnley side, and Stan, you're right. You use the word, but you look at Roland Harrison, Barry Bromley, Peter Brown. There's not many people there that would, that have any time for anything at Lowerhouse, any people or the setup, the ground. So how did that go? Can you remember that, Brom? How the bowling went throughout that game? You opened with Bush.
No, I can't remember too much about that game.
You got Roland Harrison out for 1. Not remember that? I mean, he was a great player.
Yeah, I got bowled him. Yeah, no, I can't. I remember once breaking his finger, which I was quite pleased with, but it wasn't that game.
I'm going to guess, Roger, that you bowled him out with an outswinger that started off on leg and yorked him on middle and off.
Well, the only thing, I think they wanted 6 off last over, and I'm not sure if it was Spencer. Was it Spencer, the last man?
Well, Spencer was in. Spencer went in at 9, and you bowled for 7. Bob Whittaker with 10, and Blakey was 11. Yeah, so you're not far off, Lofty. It was the end of the 33rd over that you've bowled them out, but there has been a bit of a rally there. Can any of you lads?
Allison made a. Was it Allison that scored a few?
Yeah, he got
22. Yeah.
Yeah, we tried to get him. He looked like he might be winning it for him.
Yeah, so I mean that's a fantastic victory at home. That the spectator, would have, as Stan's alluded to, would be extremely.
Just quickly going back, what was the crowd at the Burnley game? It was a hell of a crowd. How many would have been there? Do you know? Any idea?
Well, I mean,
they went through money then, didn't they?
I mean, thinking back, Evan, the ground was absolutely full, and we do, because of the success we've had in the last 15 years or so, we gauged that it would have been, I would estimate, around 3,000 people would have been there.
Yeah.
Looking at what, on a T20 now, we get about, can get 2,000 on, and it's quite full. But back then, they were in the car park, they were, everywhere watching the game.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, it was great memories. So the East Lancs at home, again, it's a no result, is that? And you're right, Lofty, what you're saying there about. I do think we, albeit we had the same number of no results as Rottenstall. So what's your thinking there about your thoughts?
Rottenstall had them against better sides.
See what you mean? Yeah.
And we had them against poorer sides. Colne. I think we do.
Well, this is the first rained off game.
That's right.
Well, at that particular time, I was confident we'd lick them, we'd beat them, because we had a bit of a hold over East Lancs after the Martini Trophy. For some reason, we started beating East Lancs.
The conditions are obviously poor. It's saying that it was a poor weekend for the weather. No result. We got 130 all out there, 55 for 1, but who knows? And Roger Bromley equalled his highest score ever in Lancashire League games.
What did we do?
And then the day after, it's Colne away, and again there's very little play there, so that's 2 no results, and we're into the middle.
Did I get any runs on that no result? Did I? Because I vaguely have this memory of walking out to bat at Colne and Collis coming up and shaking my hand and saying, "Welcome to the Lancashire League, Evan." But I must be mistaken.
No, they're back to they were 60 for 3 off 15, and it was rained off without any. With only 15 overs bowled. But that does sound like Collis coming over and welcoming.
Maybe it was in the what's the cup we played in?
And then we move on to game number 10. We're playing Rishton away, and this was on a run rate, a victory on a run rate.
What I remember about the game, this was the way at Rishton. I think this was the game. They needed 15 off the last over, and I was bowling.
Yeah.
And I think the first 2 balls went for 6. I thought, sure, this is going to be a long over, or not. And I think I picked up 3 wickets for 1 run or something in the last 5 or 6 balls.
Yeah, that could have happened.
We won. I think that's how it happened, but I could be wrong.
It's very tight. They needed 120 off their 21 overs on the run rate. We got 193, a good score. You got a 50. Evan Bush, you got 70 odd. And you have bowled the last over, and we've won by 1 run. So very tight, very close.
See, I did do something right.
You did a lot right.
Rishton had an outstanding pro that year, Kamal Singh.
Kamal Singh,
yeah.
Ground was about the size of a tennis court.
Who was a played for the West Indies, I think, Kamal Singh, but he was a great player.
So then we're moving in towards the first half of the season. We beat Rishton the week after. Looks like a bit of a convincing win, really. We've bowled them all out for 141. Brom, 5 for, you remember it? 33 off 11?
Yeah.
Go on, how well did you bowl?
I could remember it being a good victory, yeah.
Thanks for that, Rog.
Jumping straight through each wicket.
Well, you've bowled, one of the best pros in the league, and you've actually bowled him out. Can you remember that? What did it do?
What was it, Stan? An out swinger that started on leg stump.
I noticed, Roger, that you got Eric Whalley out. And which reminds me of the tale when Eric Whalley goes out to bat on a hat-trick at Lowerhouse. And he takes his guard and then he suddenly throws his bat on the floor, takes his gloves off, throws them on the floor, looks across at the changing room, he's batting at the parking end, and shouts at the top of his voice, "No wonder we're getting bowled out. The effing sight screen's not in the right effing place." So they move the sight screen and Roger gets him out first ball. So Eric's walking past me to the change rooms and I didn't dare say anything. And I turned round and it was like something off a cartoon when the gunslinger comes into town. The changing room just emptied completely of all the Richmond players. They were running to all four corners of the ground rather than face Eric's wrath. But
if I remember right, Stan, that day, you have to show your ball to opposition captain.
Right, yeah.
Right? So Clifford gives me a brand new pill. Absolutely. So I says to Eric, "There you are, that's ours." "I'm not having that." I said, "Why?" I said, "It's just come out of a plastic bag." He said, "No, I'm not having it." He said, "There's a scratch there on that seam." I said, "What?" He said, "I'm not having it." So I said to Clifford, "He's not having his ball. That's the only ball we had." So Clifford got in his car, straight back to Lowerhouse, got another ball and brought it back to Riston. And I said, "Will that do?" Well, umpires, there's nothing wrong with him. He wouldn't play with a new ball that I give him.
Brilliant.
Funny
Yeah, funny that you can't. And you can see Clifford wanging down the in his recovery.
Well, that were a thing, Jess. Actually, did Clifford used to drive really quickly? Didn't he?
Oh, he did.
Can Evan? Did he pick you up?
Me and Trevor Jones. I'll tell you a tale about that. Rottenstall, Worsley Cup. We'd both been in Turf Moor for treatment. Clifford picks us up. 12:10 for turf. Bags ready, everything. Right. Vroom, straight down Todd Road. We both had our hats on. Big car, because he were a rep for a building firm. And we were there, holding them down, going over Waterfoot, and we were flying to get us to Rottenstall ground before it started. Oh, no, Clifford, no.
Right, okay.
Can I throw a Clifford driving tale in?
Of course you can, Sam. Go on.
I'm coming down Middlesex Avenue to go to the ground, and Clifford's coming the other way, and he nearly drove me off the road. So I get to the ground, Clifford comes back to the ground. So I say, "Clifford, so I have a bit of a popper tip. Don't you dare criticise my driving. I've been driving for however many years. I'm a rep. I do thousands of miles a year. My driving's exemplary." So we go to Nelson. We play the game. I've got a brand new kit bag. First time in use. I lift my boot up to put my kit bag on behind the car to lift my boot up, and Clifford runs over my kit bag. Dirty great big tyre mark all the way up the kit bag. Snaps me bat. Nothing wrong with his driving.
Thank you to our four sponsors for supporting our podcast: Johnny Russell's Art Caterers and Milltown Pies, Alexander Grace Law, Jez and Lisa's Spoonful of Sweets, and SPE Furnishings. Links to their websites are available in the show notes and on our website. Don't forget to subscribe to get all the latest episodes as soon as they're released.
So, this is an interesting segment of the season here, and I'd like Joe and Gary to just come in and any observations they've got before we get to the halfway stage. Rottenstall have lost a couple of games here, and we're just short of halfway, and we're on 38 points, top of the league, and Rottenstall are on 28. You know, so they cut, and it's 4 points for a win back then. and one for a bonus point. So I'll come back to you, Lofty, in a couple of games' time to see what your thoughts were about it. Joe Martin, any observations about what's gone on for this first part of the season?
They've obviously been playing really well. It was actually one of my questions, Jez, was whether we knew at the halfway stage how many points we were on compared to Rottenstall. I think it's a lot of points ahead. 10 points is quite a lot, isn't it? That's, effectively 3 games, I guess.
It was two or three wins, depending whether you bought the opposition yet or not.
Yeah.
Gary, observations for you before we move on, just around, I'm loving it because, we were only young kids then, and to listening to this now and trying to get our memories back, what's your thoughts, now we're getting towards halfway?
Yeah, I think even at that stage, it was quite clear, going through the games, just as we have done, that they're already looking out for each other's results, and it was like neck and neck all the time. And whilst that was, you're right, was 2 wins, I don't think it got the gap either way, got any more than that all the season. Rottenstall got ahead at some point, and then Lowerhouse clawed it back. And it almost seemed it was like tit for tat. You both lose one on 1 week, and then they'll turn around the other week, or they both have rained off results. So, today you can be 20 odd, 30 points away, and it's still only 2 or 3 games, isn't it? So, it's. I think one thing I did notice then at that point, though, is how consistent the team selection had been. Now, when you're winning, it's obviously very easy, isn't it? And then just looking at some of the next few games, there are some changes, whether that's just you're coming into holiday season, or there've been some other unavailability or injuries, etc. I don't know, but up to that point, team selection had been, again, I'm guessing, Lofty, fairly straightforward.
It looks that way. Yeah. So then the week after, Ramsbottom at home, that is rained off, not a ball bowled, and then we go to Todmorden.
Oh.
Brom, can you remember this game? Is there, it's a defeat we've got here.
I had a look at the defeats that we had that season, and we lost 6, and 2 of them were against Todmorden. Todmorden were a decent side, but I couldn't get my head around it. They had Rod Eswick as pro, and on his day, he was sharp. He was a decent bowler, and if there was anything in the wicket, he would find it. It's just a bit of a mystery why we lost both matches to Todmorden, because I just don't think we should have done.
Just go through the stats, Graham, and then I'll ask you to comment on it. We batted first, it looks like. It looks like it was a reduced overs game, 32 overs. We got 133. Eswick and Hartley bowled all the way through, and then they've knocked them off with about 10 balls to spare. Albert Ross got 53. Bowling figures look good. Lofty's bowled well, 9.2, 25 for 4. Can you remember that, Bush?
Yeah. We were a bit slow. We didn't get enough runs. We just didn't get enough runs to put them under pressure.
Yeah.
Rod were a bit negative as well. They were a bit negative, and we kept chasing him, and then when he bowled one on wicket, we just left it, and that was one of them things that we just didn't know how to play it.
Well, that was very true in the infamous second home game, Alan. The famous that one. The Lowerhouse supporters are rocking the van. And we'll come to that in a minute. I mean, I do remember that game, and Estwick was ferocious that day. Up to that point, I'd never worn a thigh pad, and he absolutely peppered me. I must have had 15 to 20 bruises on top of bruises that day. So I'll probably throw myself on my sword and say that my 38 was probably a long slog. Sorry, that's the wrong word. A long grind.
They were a horrible side though, Lofty, weren't they?
Yeah.
Well, they were. You had the wonderfully named Albert Ross.
Yeah.
Albert Ross. He could be 90.
Even Brian Harewood, who we knew, Stan, even he could get lippy.
Yeah, Ian Smith, whose nickname was Lippy. John Briley was a doubted. Ted White, the wicket keeper, Estwick. They were always a decent side, Tom and him. Always.
Yeah, they were. They were a decent side, but horrible.
So then we're halfway through the season, Lofty. back to you for your thoughts on how it was going. We're 6 points in front of Rottenstall. I don't know who was third, fourth, or what's your thoughts, Lofty? Are you a bit more optimistic?
Thinking about it, it's still at the back of your mind. You know, your Lowerhouse, you're thinking about it, and it's going to be a fairy tale if we get to end. And at that stage, I think everybody were.
Yeah.
In the minds, had this little bit of a sneaky feeling that we might do it. As you go along the season, you'll realise we shot a selling foot to a certain extent.
We still have Rottenstall to play twice as well, which were crucial, especially getting beat twice with Todd.
Yeah,
that's where we messed up there, really, big style. Yeah. But like I say, it was at Todd, it was seeming wicked, and he took advantage. He was a big, tall lad. He was strong. He bowled well. He bowled quick, and he didn't give you much to it. It was difficult to bat.
And he was irked. He was irked that day, was Estwick, because it was a sultry day, and he was absolutely plagued by midges.
Aye, well,
at one stage, it was like something from a cartoon. He'd set off at the end of his run with this cloud of midges buzzing around his sweaty. He'd set off and leave the midges behind, and then they'd like dart after him in one of them cartoon arrows. At one stage, he was bowling in his cap, and he'd sprayed his cap with midge repellent. So he was in incredible what you remember.
Yeah.
He was in a real bad mood, and he put some venom in his bowling.
Yeah.
I ran into him. He was claiming for it. I was taking a leg bite, hit me on the arse, and went down leg side, and I was taking a run. So I hit him. I went bat. I shoulder charged him, jumped him on his backside, and umpire said, "Get on with it, game." He was just giving his way. I went, I was laughing my head off, but I'm glad he didn't have many balls to ball after that, really. That was his last over before Hartley bowled last over.
So we're moving in the 14th game. We're going into the second half of the season. We're in July now, Evan. How were you finding the season, personally, with yourself and Wendy, and you're obviously seeing you've settled in, and how did you find that first 2 or 3 months?
Oh, we enjoyed it, and as I say, we had transport and we're able to get out and about. My sister-in-law was across from New Zealand. We went down to London and picked her up. So I mean, we went up to Skipton. We loved it up there. And I remember at one stage, Bush and Shirley took us to the Lake District. So we certainly got out and saw the beautiful countryside around where we were staying. Thoroughly enjoying the cricket. Still disappointed with the way I was batting, but reasonably happy with the way I was bowling. And of course, we were top of the league and couldn't believe it.
You can't really ask for more. And again, the balance of the side, the criticism that maybe was around then, and certainly, now when people are looking back in hindsight, the way the side is balanced, you're playing that extra batter. And I'm not suggesting that takes pressure off you and you're not disappointed with your performances, but we are playing that extra batter, so that's probably why we're developing through and getting the results that we did get. So the 14th game, we've smashed them 174. We were in there 80 all out again, Evan.
No, Higgy.
Well, Higgy, I was going to ask that of Lofty. Higgy hasn't played for the last 3 or 4 games. You got 7 wickets in that game as well, Lofty. Can you remember why Higgy wasn't playing at this stage? And can you tell us about your 33 for 7 off 14.7 overs? Great bowling.
It was fish wet through at wicket.
Thank you, Henry Blofeld.
Simple.
It doesn't say that on the scorecard.
I always had a good return against Accrington, no matter if this wicket were fouled when I were at 74.
Yeah.
So I've always had a good return against Accrington.
Yeah.
But you say he didn't stump?
He hadn't played. This is about the 4th game he's not played. Darren Taylor's played.
I think he had a finger injury. I think he broke his finger.
It weren't his
Darren Taylor wasn't a bad keeper.
Oh, no, it wasn't.
It was a good keeper.
They were good.
Only a young kid.
Yeah. So his great performance there, Lofty. The figures there are outstanding. And then we move on to, we play Ramsbottom away. And again, we've won that game. you know, Rami are always a good side, and as Stan said, they finished third that year, 174 they got, and we've knocked them off with 2 or 3 overs to spare.
They had a good side at Ramsbottom. Henry Hall had had a century against us in a cup game.
Yeah, with the runner.
Ashanti Demel was a great pro.
Yeah.
Mark Price went on to play for Glamorgan. Monkhouse went on to play for Glamorgan. They weren't a bad team.
No, they're a good side, and it's quite a comprehensive win there. You know, Evans got that 38, and like you said, and Phil's opened up with a 45. Dave Keeley has got a 51, which is, you know, a fantastic victory again. You know, a little bit like a bit of a turning point, similar to the Burnley game. But it would appear there that they're catching up a little bit. Rottenstall 48 points, Lowerhouse, and Rottenstall 43. So they caught up a little bit there on our lead. So then we move on to the game we've already spoke about on a couple of occasions. I don't know which one of you wants to talk us through this. The Todd at home game where we got smashed by, they beat us by 87 runs. Anyone want to talk through that?
I do know he watered the run-ups.
It did bloody work. I had to go and apologise to Radio, were it Lancashire?
Yeah, Radio Lancashire. Yeah. I had to come off the field and apologise to the poor sods that were in the van that were being overturned, and said it won't happen again. But
it got in the press. I mean, Eswick, he would have been wide at ad infinitum these days, but he bowled so far down the leg side. And then he'd get one on the wickets and bowl somebody out. When they went round with the collection box for him, there was an ugly mood, and it was quoted in the paper that I think he was called John Crowther, and he was probably Tobin's greatest ever amateur stroke professional player, and somebody threatened to insert the collection box where the sun don't shine. Yeah. And then Radio Lancashire listeners were treated to their captain, who was a bulldog of a bloke, Phil Morgan.
Phil Morgan.
He played first-class cricket for Leicester, I think. He was sat in the van as he was being interviewed. And you just heard the commentator said, and as we speak to Phil Morgan, the Lowerhouse spectators are rocking the van. And those that were listening on Radio Lancashire at home could apparently heard, "Come out, you bastard!" trying to get to Phil Morgan. So that was a Lancashire League executive meeting as to whether they could punish us. And it was all over the Evening Telegraph. It was.
But I seem to remember that they were appealing for everything as well.
Yes, they were, Rod.
Yeah.
They were over appealing, and I think that got on everybody's nerves. But looking at the scorecard, that we were 57 all out, and they stumped 6 times, and yet they were still negatively bowling. It was, you know, it was in the pads, going down leg side, and everybody was up claiming.
I think the occasion got to us. You know, we one thing and another, and this appealing and bowling negative, and
without
it got us frustrated, and I think we lost this battle.
Yeah. Did the previous game have any effect? Anybody? You know, after losing that game, you know?
A bit of banter.
They've always been the same, haven't they? They've always been the same. They used to call it the Todd chorus, didn't they? They all used to go up, whether it was out or not.
Yeah.
They all used to claim.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, it is two, you know, the difficult defeats to take, those 2 defeats. But then you look at the Rami win and the Burnley win, which were really significant. And at this stage, Rottenstall have won on that particular day, so we're now 1 point ahead. Yeah, going into game 16, which Evans had a fantastic day. Accrington at Accrington, we've got 168 and bowl him out for 105. Evan 32 for 5 and 83. Do you remember that game, Evan?
Sort of. And the pavilion was at the top end of the ground. I remember batting. I do remember it.
And I'm just looking at D. Smith, their pro, Daryl Smith. It was, weren't it?
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, good player. But it's for me that looks like a resounding win during that game. So then we go on Church at home.
Don't bring that up. Rubbish. We failed to play that day. It was just we should have beaten. It were a banker, really. If you'd have been sat on your settee Friday night, you'd have said, "Oh, we'll win that game," but it never materialised.
Right.
We played quite badly that day.
But McCardle was a decent player, to be fair, and he got 86. A good player. He was a good player. But when you see that we've lost the chase by 2 runs, that's hard to take.
Yeah, and it's little points. I mean, it's all right at the end of the season, when it's down to 1 point, and you look at various bonus points. The Enfield game where we didn't get the bonus point, and in that game, Brom, you were not out at the end. I don't know. I'm asking a lot of you guys when it's nearly 40 years ago. Can you remember it?
I just couldn't get to strikers end, Jez.
Right.
Come on, Rod.
There were you and Rusty not out at the end. That could be a good story. That was Rusty hogging the batting.
It was as usual. None that I can remember the disappointment of not going the runs.
Yeah,
but I'm sure I weren't on strike, Jess.
Yeah, no, you wouldn't have been, and you got 2 at least. Then we go to headquarters. We go to headquarters over in Blackburn, East Lancashire. It looks like another resounding win there. We bowl them out for 68. Lofty, you got a 6 for 18 off 10.
Unplayable that day, Lofty.
I twisted my ankle just after I got my 6th wicket. I went over on it, and that were it.
Right.
I had to just come off and somebody else come on for me.
Jez, this is getting towards the end of the season now. It's obviously very tight at the top of the league. Can anyone remember the sort of discussions you were having, at the end of games? Because obviously you were still winning lots of games. I know that you lost the Church game and whatever, but can you remember any sort of discussions that you were having as a team? Like,
I think we just took one game at a time, Joe. I know it's a cliche, but as I've already said,
what client do you want?
we haven't been in this position before. So I don't think a lot was said, other than you'd always have an inquest after a win or a loss. I don't ever remember feeling nervous that we might win the league or we might throw the league. I don't remember anything like that. I think we just took one game at a time.
And Evan, had you won any state championships with Wellington or prior to you coming to Lowerhouse?
Yeah. In fact, the year before, we won everything in Wellington, New Zealand. We won the Shell Cup, Shell Trophy, the first class in the one-day comp, and beat the West Indies. Yeah.
Wow, amazing. So it's a very difficult question, I guess, but did you use any of that sort of experience to try and help some of the players, or to try and impart a bit of wisdom, I think?
Yeah, good point. Maybe I was found wanting it at that stage. I'm just looking at the thing, and I certainly didn't get a hell of a lot of runs in the.
Oh, I didn't mean it like that.
No,
few games. No, but I just.
We always had an after.
Evan, let me help you out there, Evan. I remember you discussing batting tactics frequently in almost every game. Because we'd never really had plans in games. You just went out, you batted and you bowled. It's much different now, of course, with power plays and what have you. Every side has a sort of a batting and a bowling plan. In those days, you just went out and did your best. And sometimes you realise you'd have to score quickly. Sometimes you'd have to shore it up. But I do remember you giving us a lot of help with the batting as to how to approach it, particularly if we lost a wicket or particularly if we were getting bogged down, or whatever the circumstances demanded. I distinctly remember that.
There were discussions on the field, between pros and amateurs and this and that. We didn't just go on and say, right, you do this, you do that. And there were discussions. And also during practice nights, we put some practices in, and that wasn't good because it helped morale and one thing and another. But Evan helped a lot.
There were quite... There were some leaders in the team. There were some that quite clearly weren't leaders, but Bush always had a view and an opinion, as of course did Phil, and and yourself, Alan, you were a great leader. We were never short of methods in which to try and win the game, or thoughts on how to try and win the game. Field placings, particularly. Field placings were hugely important back in the day because of the type of wickets. There were a lot of miss-hit shots. So placing your field was absolutely vital. And when I watch league cricket today, and this is no disrespect to any of today's players, and certainly not Lowerhouse players, but for instance, in our day, anybody scoring a 4 at third man or long leg was gut-wrenching for the bowler. Nowadays, because sometimes they can't afford a third man or a long leg, it's just a shrug of the shoulders. And every run was fought for back in those days. If you were hit for 4, there was an inquest.
Yeah,
there was an inquest. What's going on here?
No.
So there was constant. The field placings were moved a lot. We're playing some games and there'd be 8 people on the boundary edge. Certainly 7. Other games, you'd have 4 slips and 2 gullies.
Yeah.
You do certain players' shots, like you're talking about Albert Ross earlier on. All he used to do was just lean over and tickle it around his leg. So you had to have a
completely leg side, yeah.
Yeah, and people like that, Woody from Rottensall, they used to like to just put it through the gully area. So you try and do all these things, but that were on the field. You weighed them up as you went along. And more often than not, the catching in the Lowerhouse side were unbelievable.
Yeah.
Good fielders. Some good fielders.
I mean, it does sound now you're getting, the pressure is starting to build. The spectators will be there. And again, I wonder, Joe Martin's point there, everyone's obviously helping out around the winning side. But again, no matter who we are, what age you are, because you've not had that winning mentality, it's difficult to get those odd wins. Stan, we cannot not mention your 71 that you got against Enfield. Looks like you won the game for them there, along with some tight bowling from the bowlers. But you didn't bowl in that game, Evan. Can you remember that?
No, I don't know why, but we obviously, Bush and Rog got 6 wickets, and who got the others? I can't remember.
Yeah, Lofty opened up with Brom. Brom's obviously bowled very, very well, very economical. They're 8 ball overs then, 36 for 3, and Bush has cleared up with the same figures. So
Jez, can I come in? You'll notice I was caught sub. Do you know who that sub was?
Higgy.
Brian Higgy. They were so demoralised with Enfield. I remember smashing one at Mark Wheel and then he got out of the way. They'd lost all interest and Higgy came out and sub-fielded at third man. And I went for a cut shot and it flew off the top edge and Higgy ran 30 to 40 yards to catch a skyer. And I can tell you now, none of the Enfield players would have got anywhere near it because they'd completely lost interest.
You got it,
never did it before.
How many overs were left, Stan?
Good old Higgy. Oh, I was on for a ton. Good old Higgy. Good old Higgy.
Did you have a conversation afterwards with him about it?
I did.
Oh, bless him. Bless him. What can you say? He always did his best. We all did. Nobody went out and sub-fielded half-heartedly.
Holden, send more house to save the house.